So it's been 7 months in Japan, and the thing that has taken me the longest to figure out so far is how Japanese people think. And it's really hard to understand. I can only explain so much in this video, but some things you just have to see for yourself and try and figure it out on your own. And I'd like you to keep in mind that during this video, everything I say is, generally speaking, it's a generalization of Japanese people. There are exceptions to every rule in any country or culture, and Japan is no exception to that. Okay, so when you start trying to think about how Japanese people think, you have to keep in mind that Japanese people have a more communal mindset than Western thought processes, than Westerners do. They think in groups, and generally speaking, they enjoy being in groups more than they enjoy being alone. There's a saying that Japanese people will do anything in groups, but nothing on their own. And you can see it when people talk to me and the other exchange students at my school. It's generally speaking in groups. They very rarely talk to us one-on-one or if they're alone. Probably because they feel intimidated, and also they're not sure if we speak Japanese or not the first time they talk to us. Generally speaking, people are pretty surprised if you do speak Japanese. But going from there, you also have to remember that Japanese people are very, very aware of respect, boundaries, and if somebody's above you or below you. And you can see it in the language. There's, in Japanese, there's formal language, simple language, I guess you could say, and then there's rude language. If you're learning Japanese, you might understand some of these words, but Sonkeigo, there's three types. There's three types of it, and it's the formal language. Now, one type is just using masu to desu. Just using that. And then there's another part where verbs like tabemasu turn into meishiagarimasu. Just to be more formal. And you use that kind of language when you're talking to somebody above you in your company, or a teacher, or somebody older than you. But a lot of Japanese people don't study it anymore, so they can't use it properly. Then there's another kind of language where when you use it in the same times, but when you're talking about yourself to somebody that you don't know or who's above you, you use it to put yourself below them. Humble terms, and I forget what that's called in Japanese. It's very complicated. And then there are words that aren't necessarily bad words, but if you say them, you're probably being rude. There's omae, which is used pretty frequently in southern Japan, but you only use it if you are angry, and it means you. If you are angry or you're joking around. But take, for example, so when you take the idea of somebody who's thinking about other people all the time, and very aware of how they affect other people and what they say to other people, and then you bring into that the boundaries and the power differences. I'm not sure if power is the right word, but so you have a situation where, okay, coworker A has worked at this company for a fairly long time and is fairly young. Coworker B hasn't worked at this company for a fairly long time, but is older than coworker A. So coworker B hasn't been here for very long. They make a lot of mistakes. Coworker A notices this, but they don't say anything to coworker B directly because they're afraid that they'll hurt their feelings, because coworker B might not want to be corrected by coworker A because they're older. So instead, coworker A goes to their boss and tells them about coworker B's mistakes, because then the boss can tell coworker B without insulting them. because they're technically above them, younger or older. But coworker B finds out that coworker A went to the boss about the mistakes instead of telling them directly. Now, in Western culture, what would probably be right to do is tell your coworker directly. It seems like you're going behind their back, and like you're going behind their back if you go to your boss directly. But this would be normal in Japan. And if coworker B is a foreigner and coworker A is a Japanese person, it gets really confusing then, because the older person feels backstabbed, but the younger person feels like if they had said it directly, that would have been more harmful. Sorry. And stuff like this happens to me all the time living here. And it feels like, to me, somebody who doesn't like gossip, that people talk about other people behind their backs, and that, literally speaking, is what it is. But it doesn't have the same malicious tone to it most of the time. And if you're going to Japan as for work or as an exchange student, you have to try and keep this in mind. It's really hard to. I've heard my host families talking about me when they think that I don't understand, or that I'm not listening, or that I can't hear. But I do understand most of the time. I usually am half listening, and I most of the time can hear when they do this. And at first I was really hurt by it, and it took me a really long time to figure out that they don't mean anything by it. I mean, real families, families that are families by blood, they'll do this to you. If you listen, your family probably talks about you behind your back, complains, whatever, and remembering that helps me feel okay about it. But you really do have to keep that in mind. And if you just remember those 2 points, you can figure out why Japanese people do most of the stuff they do. There are a few things that you just don't understand. I don't understand. But that's the way it is. It also explains why they overwork themselves like crazy. Because it's a community thing. You do your best for everyone. If you are interested in learning more about the differences between Western and Asian thought, I'd suggest consider reading this book, The Geography of Thought, by Richard E. Sorry. Richard E. Nisbet. And the language might be hard to understand for some people. It's a psychology book. It's got a bunch of studies in there and it'll explain it. Read it. The points are interesting. The language is, in my opinion, dry, but I'd suggest considering reading it if you're really interested, or if you are coming to Japan or Asia to live here. Other than that, update on my life. I'm changing host families again, but oddly it seems like I'm going to be living with the host family that I was living with in Japan for the first month, back in Himeji. Again, 2 hours away from my school. But it's okay, I really like the family. My Japanese has gotten to a point where I don't have to speak English in every conversation, and I can understand most of what's going on, even if I don't understand all the vocabulary. I'll consider making an ABCs to Japanese video if anybody wants to hear, and I'll explain hiragana, katakana, and just some basic ideas. Yep. See you guys later. Bye.